I didn't intend to record a podcast episode this morning as it is the day after Christmas, really, and everybody is back to work, and I have a lot to do, a lot of clients' cases to work on. However, my wife keeps sending me Family Feud clips because she knows how much I love Steve Harvey. I think that of all the comedians on television, not stand-up comedians, that's an entirely different genre within a genre, if you will. But of all the comedians on television, he's the fastest, the quickest, the most charming, the most down to earth, relatable, and probably the best. And that is why I have a bit of an obsession with Family Feud. I can be having a horrible day or hear some divorce stories that will make your hair stand on edge, things that nobody wants to hear and nobody really wants to get involved in. And perhaps one of the saving graces for me is watching clips. It could be wrestling. Yes, I know I'm an adult who enjoys wrestling. I'm not sure if that's strange like it used to be or if it's commonplace in mainstream. I really love watching old episodes of Family Feud. I find them to be hilarious. And as a kid, I always wanted to appear in Family Feud. Maybe someday in the distant future that will happen. In the meantime, a question came across that directly relates to my line of work. Obviously, I am a family lawyer, which means that I deal with paternity, divorce, alimony, child support, and the like. I'm constantly trying to identify the causes of divorce, not just to ask people about counseling, not just to help people resolve their case amicably, but also because it's of some personal interest. When you've heard thousands of stories about terrible situations and thousands of stories about people's dramatic events, sometimes you try to figure out if there are common threads, common themes. Here we go. Family Feud question. This is an old episode and an old clip. If a man cheats on you, according to 100 women, you do what? Somebody said, kill him. Of course, I do not recommend that. I'm pretty sure nobody recommends that, and I'm certain that the contestant meant it facetiously. But nonetheless, people say things like that in the heat of the moment. It's in criminal law, it is what we learn in law school is called in flagrante delicto. You become jealous or infuriated when you find out about your lover or catch them in the act in flagrante delicto. Another answer is beat him. Well, of course. I mean, if you have that kind of a relationship and you're hurt, the woman might pummel the man. The answer that follows that, forgive my laughter, that I found interesting is somebody said whoop the mistress too. No, not just kill him, but then go whoop the mistress. Okay, interesting. Somebody gave the classic answer, well, if your husband's having an affair on you, it's time to play hanky panky yourself. Go ahead and cheat on him too. I think that is probably as insofar as answers go in a Family Feud game, fine. Insofar as real life goes, that is probably, aside from kill him, the absolute worst thing I've heard. Do not fight fire with fire. Do not lower yourself to that standard. Do not degrade yourself just because. If your relationship is over, then have at it, of course. But if your marriage is not over, or you go and have infidelity yourself just because, you could be risking a lot, especially with modern medicine, such as the way it is. You could be risking pregnancy in the context of a marriage, and so on and so forth. I don't mean that pregnancy is bad. I mean that in the context of a marriage, when it's somebody other than the husband, there are certain legal situations that go on with that. And if you're going to stay with your husband, then that creates some potentially devastating litigation and fights between biological parent and non-biological parent that you might not be prepared for. What else do we have? We have sabotage him. I'm not quite sure how that would go, but we can imagine if we were to use our wicked imaginations. We can imagine that somebody might try to contact their employer, which happens in family all of the time, to tell them about their nefarious deeds, their infidelity, their cheating, their destruction of the family, try to cancel their career, among other things. Forgive him. Well, maybe. Sometimes people really do forgive. I just had a conversation on our YouTube channel with somebody. Yes, you can forgive, maybe never forget. Once you've been cheated on by somebody that you trust, love, confide in, and you have a life together, that is really brutal. That is something that you might not be able to come back from psychologically. How can you be romantic with somebody knowing that they have veered off course that way and they've been romantic with somebody else. And I've always asked myself, would it hurt more to hear, "Oh, it didn't mean anything, honey"? Well, if it didn't mean anything, then what do we have? What does that mean to you if you're so casually willing to go have a relationship with somebody else? Well, we're married. What does our marriage mean to you if your relationship was meaningless? Less than meaningless? Less than nothing? Ultimately, though, of course, what's the number one answer? You guessed it, everyone. Divorce him. If your husband has cheated on you, do you divorce him? That's a really good question. I suppose that would depend on a number of things. One, has there been the introduction of some sort of STI into the relationship that creates a medical issue for both parties? Has there been some sort of loss of affection, loss of companionship? Has that person that has been infidelitous or cheated on you, has that person taken time away from their family life, away from their child rearing responsibilities, maybe sacrificed hours of their career to go on these escapades? Just how long did it last? How deeply did it go? What's the level of their affection for this other person? And why did they do it? In some cases, maybe some of the most unforgivable situations, it's not for me to say, but from my personal perspective only. This is not your perspective, nor am I encouraging anybody to feel a certain way. I couldn't imagine what it means to be you. I do not walk in your shoes. You do not walk in mine. This is just a podcast, food for thought, because people like to have these conversations. Even if they can't always have them, maybe then they just like to listen to them to gain some perspective on these things. So the question is, if your spouse has cheated on you, we talk about this forgiveness. Can you forget it? How do you maintain your relationship and go on with it? So imagine this. I mentioned a minute ago, imagine this terrible situation where you cannot be romantic with somebody because of a health concern. And there are many of them. And that at your lowest moment when you really need your partner, that is the moment they chose to have an extramarital dalliance, as they call it. Is that something that you can come back from? If you have children and they're small, in other words, maybe under 6, maybe under 10, do you think that it's worth staying in the marriage in order to protect those children? And can you maintain a semblance of a happy marriage? And is that wrong too? Or is that the right way to go? These are personal decisions. These are for you to make, and this is for your life, and we only get one of them. So, however you choose to move forward and move on, I hope you do so wisely. But I thought it, not the situation comical, but the answers comical from Family Feud. And of course, the number one answer, again, divorce him. I don't really see any way around that personally, but thank goodness, to my knowledge, it has not happened in my marriage, and I hope it will not happen in yours or anyone else's, but it seems to be quite commonplace. And in the age of Tinder and Bumble and Christian Match and Match.com and JDate and everything else in between, I have no idea what more recent ones are. I watch the Netflix shows just like everybody else with their little romantic movies for the holidays, and occasionally they publish a Hallmark movie in the top banner, and we all watch it with our spouses and such. So I'm sure there are dozens or hundreds of applications. Has it ever been easier to try to meet people? And has it ever been easier to have a casual relationship than it is in 2024, 2025? So these things are out there, and I hope you'll consider carefully which way to go if you find out some less than considerate, less than fortunate news from or about your spouse. Thanks for listening, everyone.